US troops have left Afghanistan after 20 years. Afghans are now left to fend for themselves in a country ruled by the Taliban. The citizens of Kabul are still coming to terms with the new reality. But the question is, will Afghanistan stand back on its feet? Afghans are hoping for the Taliban to start working on improving the country's economy for starters. They are voicing their concerns about the state of employment in the country.
بیکاری بخیر زیاته ده خلک په تشویش کې دي نو که دوی کوشش وکړي چې د خلکو د کار موقع مساعده کړي او تعلیم او تربیه کار شروع شي خلک بې تعلیمه دي او کار ته نه دي تللي
هیچ کس در افغانستان کسی نمیخواد که خارجی باشه از هر کشوری که باشه خود مردم افغانستان باشه و هیچ کسی خارجی وجود نداشته باشه همگی به حساب خوش هستند اما حساب کار بسیار ضرور است که یک وظیفه باید داشته باشه اگر بیکار باشه همگی میرن باز کشورهای خارجی از این جوانه که
The Taliban face a series of challenges as they fully take over Afghanistan. Majority of the billions of dollars that Afghanistan holds in foreign reserves now frozen in America. Banks have implemented withdrawal controls. They fear that they would be running out of their deposits. Meanwhile, banks in Kabul are drawing huge crowds with cash-strapped Afghans waiting for hours to withdraw money. Our correspondent Anas Malik traveled to the banks across Kabul, getting us this report. Take a look.
Long queues, hundreds on the streets, a limit on cash withdrawal and hours of waiting. Massive crowds are gathering outside banks as locals in Kabul rush to withdraw money. The biggest complaints are the new restrictions on cash withdrawal. Earlier, the Taliban had ordered banks to reopen, but imposed a limit on withdrawals of 20,000 Afghani. This is around $230. In a cash-based society like Afghanistan, the closure of banks was a dual blow, living without paper money for days. And the downfall of yet another regime had people fearing for their future in the country.
We call on the Islamic Emirate to build the Afghan economy as soon as possible, so that the Afghans can come and start working again.
Our correspondent took to the streets of Kabul to see what the situation was like in the Afghan capital. Wherever he turned, there were long queues outside banks, with people desperate to get their money out.
17 days of the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, the banks are pretty much dysfunctional. Thousands line up every morning outside this prominent private bank of Afghanistan in a bid to collect cash. They complain that for the week, they're only allowed to take about $200 or 20,000 Afghanis out. Hundreds and hundreds of people have been waiting in order to get money to run their daily affairs.
Afghanistan's banks are critical to the country's recovery, but they are now facing an uncertain future. There are doubts over everything, from liquidity to employment of female staff. For many here, the banks are the new airport. The stress of not knowing how long the money will last, as well as the long queues, have left Afghans spending days and nights outside the banks. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And for Afghans, the list of problems only keeps getting longer. The prices of everyday items are on the rise. Billions of dollars of aid stalled. There are restrictions on cash withdrawal from banks. And the Taliban is yet to form a new government. Our correspondent Anas Malik traveled through the streets of Kabul, talking to shopkeepers and residents about this growing crisis.
The last US soldier has left Afghanistan. But for the Taliban, the struggle is not over yet. The growing economic hardship in the capital is its most pressing challenge right now. Afghanistan is a predominantly cash-based economy, heavily dependent on imports for food and basic necessities. With billions of dollars in foreign aid stalled, pressure on the currency has been relentless. Prices of everyday items are soaring. Coupled with a sinking currency and rising inflation, this is adding misery to a war-torn nation, where 1/3 of the population lives on less than $2 a day.
In Kabul's biggest wholesale market, shopkeepers complain that with borders being closed and limited supplies with them, prices are bound to go up.
Our correspondent travelled to the shops of Kabul. Everywhere he went, shopkeepers had just one complaint: the soaring prices and the lack of customers.
The supplies have reduced. The prices are directly subjected to dollar price, be that spices or other things. In the market, the supplies are lesser. On one hand, the dollar price is upped, and on the other hand, the prices of other things are also upped. Once the dollar price subsides, then we can subside our prices as well.
Since the takeover of Islamic Emirate, our supplies have taken a hit and the prices of all items have gone up. A bottle of oil has gone up by 300 to 400 Afghani. The supplies are very lesser. People are upset because of this, because of what happened to the government. Our expectations with the Islamic Emirate is that they announce their setup as soon as possible so that this uncertainty ends.
Prices of daily goods have skyrocketed. Due to a fall in the exchange rates, Afghans are witnessing their salaries disappear and their savings put out of reach by the cash withdrawal limit. The Taliban have said that the problems will ease once a new government is in place. But the structural problems run very deep. Foreign aid accounts for almost 43% of the economic output. $9 billion in foreign reserves are held outside the country, which are out of reach for the Taliban. Coupled with the mass exodus of Afghans, Taliban also face a crunch of manpower and resources.
The bigger challenge for the Afghan Taliban remain is the effective utility of skilled labor, whoever is left behind. We saw a notification coming in suspending school activities so that these young students can maintain law and order within the city. But the bigger challenge, as I said, would continue to remain, is the effective utility of skilled labor given the absence of professionals. Anas Malik in Kabul, Afghanistan for WION World is One.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.